We welcome all our participants to this webinar organized by the Institute of Social Auditors of India on the growing relevance of social impact assessment. And we have with us CA Manjari Sabnis Madam. She is a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India since 1998, and after 25 years career in corporate finance, she has moved to working independently as well as collaboratively in the field of finance and social impact assessment. She was actively involved in drafting and review of social audit standards by ICI also. So ma'am, we welcome you to this webinar and thank you so much for joining in. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Shruti. Let me start by extending a very warm welcome to all the participants of the show today. As Shruti has already mentioned, the topic that will be presented today is the growing relevance of social impact assessments. Allow me to share my presentation, please. So, yeah, is the screen visible now? Yeah, sure. So today in our session, we would like to kind of break the topic down in three sections. One is the background, that is the context, which will help us understand the need and the growing relevance of social impact assessments in today's day and age. I'm given to understand that some participants here are already members of the Institute of Social Auditors of India, and they would be well aware of the context, but some of them are chartered accountants aspiring to be social impact assessors. So I would like to just dwell upon these subjects bit by bit, and the people who are already aware can kind of take it like a refresher session or a refresher and update session. So in the first part, the background, in which I would like to touch upon mainly three entities. United Nations Environment Program, which came up with the UN SDGs, the Niti Aayog's Sustainable Development Goals, and the Social Stock Exchange. In the second part, I would like to bring forth the concept of social impact assessments, the specific frameworks and the standards that are to be used as reference by social impact assessors, and some assurance methodologies. And in the third part, what opportunities are there for CAs as well as other professionals in this field, and where and how we can add value. So to set the background, a lot of the members here would be aware that in September 2015, the United Nations Environment Program held a convention, world level convention of more than 190 nations, and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals were set, which were targeted to be achieved by 2030. So based on the climate risk assessed by all the experts at that point in time, 17 goals were arrived at, which are now famously known as the 17 UN SDGs. So a lot of social development is generally benchmarked against the UN SDGs. But unfortunately, even at the world level, one of the reports of United Nations itself is showing that only 17% of the targets are achieved, and we are already at the end of 2025. So a lot of work needs to be done, and especially so within our country, because if you see the ranking of India as per their 2025 Development Solutions Network report, India is ranked 99 in a group of 167 member nations, which is a little improvement over 2003. In 2003, we were at 112, but today we are at 99, which is way beyond our otherwise scale of operation or growing importance in the economic sphere. So while we are one of the fastest growing economies of the world, philanthropy is not growing at that rate. And that is why the government has also kind of taken action and realized the need to let Niti Aayog focus on sustainable development goals, which are specifically relevant to India and based on the priorities given the Indian demographic and context. So right now, if you see our score is 67 on 100, which is not such a great score. India needs to improve. And in that context, Niti Aayog has come up with a philosophy of cooperative and collaborative federalism, which means that all states, the data is made available for all states, and it's kind of a competitive and collaborative environment to improve the performance of all states in various different goals. So in given this background, if you see the graph of what level of achievement India has been showing. Now, this is year-wise progress. So you can see a lot of areas where we were in red have moved to yellow, and some places where we were in yellow, we have moved to green year-wise. So there is a lot of progress happening, and that is because of increased focus of the government on the social sector also. Uh, but as you can see, in none of the areas, in none of the 17 goals, we have achieved blue, which is that achiever status. And especially in gender equality, we are still in red. Now, to take the example of SDG 2, like no hunger, Sustainability Development Goal 2, no hunger. If you see the middle or the central belt of India, you can still see a lot of red states based on 2023-24 report, which means that we are substantially lagging behind in terms of eradicating hunger or malnutrition. Although a lot of programs are being run, if you have conducted impact assessments in area around Mumbai, you go to schools, you will see a lot of midday meals programs, either by the government or, Akshay Patra or all those organizations which are working on it. But if you see, go to the interiors, a lot of work has not been done so far. So what is required is, so one of the main concerns is funding. So what is required is that large chunks of capital should be diverted to the social sector in an organized manner, because a lot of individual donors who would also like to help within the country, but they do not know whether their donations would be safe and would be utilized for the purpose for which they were initially intended for. So that is the reason the social stock exchange has also been established as a platform by the government. So Bombay Stock Exchange and National Stock Exchange both have a social stock exchange on which already a lot of entities have registered. Now, if you see the registration number on National Stock Exchange, it has crossed 80, and on if you see their number of listings for funding, that has also crossed 36. So it is slowly catching up. And to make it more popular, what initiative government has taken is they have made the ticket size to be just rupees 1,000. So anybody who wants to donate rupees 1,000 and above can just subscribe to the ZCZP bonds, which are zero coupon, zero principal bonds, basically a donation to their favorite initiative, which is listed on the social stock exchange. So it just gives a lot of um, assurance to all the donors, even the retail donors or corporate sector who wants to, divert their CSR obligation funds to the social stock exchange, that these are well-regulated entities within the social sector, whichever are registered. And for that, they have mandated the requirement of social impact assessments on an annual basis, and that is where social impact assessors come in. And so we'll come to all of that a little later. But the whole process has started. A lot more funds need to be galvanized in that direction. So if we have to see last year's, like 2024, total social sector outlay, it was rupees 25 lakh crore as per a report by Bain and Company. Now, this seems like a large amount, but it also includes the public funding. Now, since so much funding is going into the social sector, and so much importance is given to the development of the social sector and social, human capital in general in the country based on the different sustainable development goals, there is a need for assurance. And when we talk of assurance, we'll be touching upon the three important aspects of assurance here: the social audit or social impact assessments. Now, social audits, as they were earlier referred to, the name has been changed in December 2023 by SEBI to social impact assessments. So everywhere, when what we some of the members would have studied social audit standards, or would have referred to them, these engagements as social audits, the same will be now referred to as social impact assessments everywhere. Now, the second aspect is the framework, that is the standards, social impact assessment framework given by CA Institute, and of course, the various other ESG frameworks which have been used by various NGOs so far. So, we'll be touching upon these aspects, and uh, of course, the role of impact assessors. So what exactly is a social impact assessment? Again, going back to the United Nations Environment Program in 2007, they came up with a definition which is arguably one of the most widely accepted definitions of social impact assessment. What is it? It is a process of research, planning, and management of social change or consequences, both positive and negative, intended as well as unintended, arising from policies, plans, developments, and projects. Now, let me just go back to the words which are emboldened here. Why is it a process of research? Because, a lot of people would think that who are not initiated into this subject would think that there would be a checklist. Okay, these are the parameters to be checked. You go to the NGO, request data, and check whether the parameters are met. So it is not that limited an exercise. What is recommended is that right from the outset, whenever the social intervention is planned, it is advisable that the impact assessor is involved in the matter, so that one understands as an assessor, one understands the context of the intervention, what is the problem that they are planning to solve, and how they are planning to solve it. So accordingly, the assessor can ask for data, what points of data need to be maintained, and with what frequency, what needs to be checked. So unless the baseline data is available, one can never come up with a robust, authentic social impact assessment report. So a lot of NGOs which are probably having their intent is very clear. It is not to be doubted. They are working in a particular sector and they are all committed towards it, but they are not probably very professionally organized in terms of maintaining data and kind of uh, having a documented evidence or at each and every level, whether it is a baseline assessment, midline assessment, endline, or final assessment. So in that context, the person or the assessor needs to be involved in the research, also in terms of um, plotting out or mapping out the project monitoring framework. It could be a theory of change framework, or it could be a logic model framework, whatever it is. It is extremely helpful if it is a collaborative effort. So in that context, research and planning, and how management of social change, because a lot of people would think that, okay, our job is to just assess what the situation is and to point out observations for improvement, if any. So there is a question of management of social change, because that is supposed to be the responsibility of the social enterprise, or what we refer to as the responsible party. But what happens is, once the exercise is concluded, it is the very much within the scope of social impact assessment to suggest uh, any measures for course correction, also mitigate losses, or mitigate adverse impacts, if any, overcome challenges. So in that context, it is an assessor is involved in the management of social change or its consequences. Now, when we talk about positive and negative consequences, which have to be listed down in the social impact assessment report of any social intervention, or intended and unintended, let me give one example. Project tiger. This is in the context of, as you all would know, it is in the context of wildlife preservation, and a very successful and well documented project. So what are the positive and negative consequences? Positive consequences, yes, it's very successful. The population of tigers has increased. The population of healthy tigers has increased. A lot of areas have been allocated to sanctuaries. Um, so everything working out well. What are the negative consequences, which we already known, right? So when you increase the population of predatory animals or wildlife, or huge animals like elephants, tigers, or even leopards, there will be a human animal conflict in the areas bordering the sanctuaries and the villages. So these are some negative consequences which the local forest officers will have to deal with, or intended and unintended consequences of social change. So sometimes, what is the intended consequence? That obviously um, the tigers would not, as an apex predator, has to survive and thrive, and they will not go extinct and all of that. But what is the unintended consequence? Sometimes these we come across that if the population increases too much, they move some tigers to another corridor, which is not yet developed enough to cater to the tigers, and they don't find adequate prey. So then they will go to the neighboring areas. Some of them might become man eaters, or they might get poached if adequate security is not there. So unintended negative consequences can also arise, but there can be unintended positive consequences also. Like, for in this example, it's all about tigers and everything is working out well, but the positive unintended consequences, that the sanctuary areas are so very well protected, that your illegal afforestation or exploitation of forest reserves, or everything, all of those activities automatically go down because of higher surveillance, and the forest cover is maintained successfully, which protects the ozone layer. So environmentally, it is very positive. So we can have unintended positive consequences also. The reason why I'm giving so many examples of different things is we have to, for any project, in the annual impact assessment report, list them down as in these various categories. So I tried to explain this with the help of an example. Another example, I was conducting an assessment of an NGO which was providing career guidance to school students in their last year. So the unintended negative, a lot of people would say, oh, this is a great service, and otherwise the students would have had to pay 10,000 rupees for a career guidance vocational test conducted outside the school. School is providing the services. So that's a very positive social impact. But the unintended impact was that the students were very uninitiated in grade 10. They did not know what various vocations, what their life actually entails, what those professions mean, what is the kind of work they'll have to do, which skills they will have to develop. So when they were asked about their favorite skills and everything, people wrote, I love playing football and I love dancing and all, which probably were their hobbies. But very few of them actually wanted to become footballers or football coaches or dance teachers. It's just that if you're studying a lot, then there are certain things you would rather enjoy rather than studying. So these contexts were not given, and the parents were surprised with the results. Oh, my child wants to become a sports person and not pursue academics. So that kind of created clashes. So these are unintended negative consequences of certain interventions. And what, as impact assessors, if we flag those, next time the social enterprises plan their interventions a little more carefully. So you're basically mitigating adverse social impacts and maximizing social benefits which were intended through the social intervention. So what is the benefit of SIS? Obviously, once the assessment is done, the social enterprise is able to track its success or failure in a time-bound manner in achieving its own targets, which were, which was a part of their stated intent when they began the program. And they are able to put or develop robust data management systems and understand trends from long-term analysis. Year on year, if you go on conducting impact assessments, you can understand trends and you can improve from there. Then there is, of course, like I said, you can mitigate adverse social impacts, maximize social welfare, and a lot of times social impact assessments are also helpful in clarifying whether the intervention in the first place was suitable for the targeted beneficiaries. For example, if you're having a project of watershed management for a cluster of villages, one of the villages, and that is to improve their agricultural output. Maybe one of the villages does not pursue agriculture as its main occupation. They are into tourism or into handicrafts or something else. So investing in watershed management uh, projects suit in order to improve agriculture is not a suitable project implementation in that area. So whether the project is a right fit and it is actually providing a solution to a problem, to a social issue in a given geography is also comes out very clearly after a social impact assessment. If it is working well, it helps in securing additional funding, increasing the traction of the program, and one can scale up and probably, or duplicate the success in some other geographies also. So concrete evidence is available. So not nowadays, a lot of times as impact assessors, we have data in digital form also, which can be, so evidence can also be digitally maintained, easily shared when required, of all positive as well as negative consequences of an intervention. So it also helps for the learning to spread fast. In our internal context, it is also social impact assessment is also defined as an independent, objective, and reliable examination of a project or a project-based activity by of a social enterprise governed by a SRO. SRO is a self-regulatory organization or any other regulatory authority to assess whether the program is implementing activities which are in accordance with its original stated strategic intent. Like, for example, you are assessing the development of a school in a rural area, and the intention was to provide to include, let's say, more girls into the education system, but you're running the school and it's just an additional school in the area and the girls are still not coming to the school. So in which case that the stated intent is not being fulfilled. The program is running well, it is useful to the society, but is the stated intent fulfilled? That is the question that we look at here. Then we also assess the stated performance in terms of its impacts or outcomes. So what was the target and what has been achieved? In terms of, so here we are assessing the effectiveness of the project implementation. And of course, the third aspect is suggesting ways to improve the performance. And in that context, one can issue a management letter. So this is over and above your SIA report. What are the different elements of SIA engagement? One is a tripartite relationship between the social impact assessor, the responsible party, that is the social enterprise. Now, here a social enterprise either means a non-profit organization or a for-profit social enterprise. Both are referred to as social enterprise. So the tripartite relationship is between the social impact assessor, the responsible party, and the intended users of this report, which could be the original funders, the donors, the risk funders, or the impact funders, or in general, the government authorities, the regulatory authorities, or research, people in research who want to study the impact of social interventions. So all of these people could be, and of course the volunteers, the targeted beneficiaries, the employees of the social enterprise, all these stakeholders could be the intended users. The second important aspect is, of course, the project or the program itself, which is being implemented to bring about the desired social change. The third aspect is the project monitoring framework. Now, like I touched upon earlier, it could be either the theory of change framework or the logic model framework or any other framework which the social enterprise is using. We will come to one example of the framework a little later. Then a very important aspect of this engagement is audit evidence, which, like I said, a lot of times these days we maintain in digital format. Either it could be focus group discussions, recordings, or it could be pictures, or even if your questionnaires or surveys are conducted digitally, then that it could be a compilation of all of that. And then last but not the least, the social impact assessment report. These are the 5 important elements of this entire engagement. Um, so this is one project monitoring framework and one of the most popular ones worldwide. Uh, Here you have at the beginning of the project itself, it is planned and laid out in such a way that is helpful for everyone involved in the project, right from its key stakeholders to the public at large, to look at how the project is going to progress and what it exactly intends to achieve. Now, it starts with the implementation strategies, all the inputs that are required for the project, be it the capital. Now, capital in terms of financial capital, human capital, management bandwidth, materials, other resources, technology. So all of and social capital. So social capital means not the human capital or the management or the employees of the social enterprise. Social capital means the entire network which is kind of deployed by the social enterprise. It could be donors, advisors, they could be like volunteers, employees of the social enterprise, local government authorities, local political parties, and they're all connections and all of that which is coming together in terms of network to implement this project is the social capital. So all kinds of capital, resources, and inputs of all kinds, they come together and a strategy is formed to solve a particular social problem. So that is the main input. So these activities are the main input of this intervention, based on which, and we have some assumptions and risks outlined at this stage, based on which certain outputs are expected. The outputs are then measured on the basis of our output indicators, and the outputs over a period lead to outcomes, and outcomes over a period lead to impact. And impact is the final destination, because that is what is desired in the society. So outcome indicators and impact indicators also are parameters to measure the progress of the project implementation. Now, I'll give one example here of a project and how that theory of change model is mapped. Let's say we are talking about an NPO, which is in the thematic area of SAS 6, revival of national history and culture. So the project is about restoration of an old historical site. Obviously, all you have researchers, you have members of the Archaeological Society of India, you have members of the social enterprise, the management, the donors, all of them come together and they decide that we'll restore this historical place because we want to revive its national heritage in the local area, and we want to make it popular so that the this and the future generations are able to understand our history and culture. Okay, so let's say this is the project, all the resources have come together, there is a strategy of implementation. So the outputs would be the activities that are conducted to restore the so the timelines are set, everything. So the activities that are conducted to restore the physical premises. There would be activities conducted to have new scholars conduct some research in in the contemporary context, or using contemporary methodologies and technologies. So that is another output. Okay, so how, when you're talking about output indicators, indicators would be how much percentage of work is completed in terms of the restoration. Second indication would be the number of scholars who have been assigned to conduct research on various aspects of that historical site. Third activity could be like, for example, you're creating awareness through travel blogs, articles in media and all of that. So how many such articles or media outputs have been released? So these are all output indicators. Now, the third phase would be the outcome. Is it really creating any interest? Are there any increased footfalls to the place of historical importance? Is there more awareness in the local area regarding this place? Are there more? Is there more interest on social media or in this place? Has the travel to this place increased to study these structures, whether it is sculpture, architecture, paintings, or just the history or the mythology or the stories, the art, everything? Is it, has it generated that level of interest? So that would be measured in outcome indicators. And the impact, the desired impact was revival of national heritage and culture in that particular area. So has that impact been achieved? So this is how the theory of change model works, and this is the project monitoring framework. It is just a structured and systematic approach to link activities to their impact, and it just depicts the chain of results in the theory of change model. So the first step everywhere is laying out the logic framework, the theory of change model, or whichever other framework it is being used. Then what are the frameworks and standards that, as an impact assessor, one needs to be aware of or use for reference? One is the social impact assessment framework, which is basically guiding on a professional, qualitative, documented, um, advanced approach towards this activity. There are detailed guidelines as to how quality is to be maintained, how evidence is to be measured, what is the sampling, what are the sampling techniques to be used. It is like, for example, there are some CA member participants, so then this is like an internal audit framework. Then there are social impact assessment standards, which also the Sustainability Board of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India has come up with. These are in 16 thematic areas. We'll look at the thematic areas and how they can be mapped to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So even if the organizations are international and they want a mapping vis-a-vis UN SDGs, you can still follow your SAS and kind of provide counterlinks to the UN SDGs. And of course, there are some organizations here which are branches of worldwide social enterprises. So they would be, some of them would already be following their ESG reporting frameworks. Most popular amongst them is the Global Reporting Initiative, the GRI framework as it's commonly known. So although these are predominantly ESG frameworks for measuring the ESG performance of corporates, even in the social sector, in certain, because in ESG, S is also one major factor, social performance assessment. So where these frameworks have already been applied by some organizations, so it is important for impact assessors to be aware of these frameworks as well, and they provide good, robust methodologies and structures to conduct the assessments. So they can provide insights as well. Integrated reporting is about, 6 forms of capital, how the human capital is developed, how social capital is developed, how financial capital is developed, or natural capital. So it is capital oriented approach towards looking at things. Iris Plus is another framework which asks questions to the social intervention like what, who, how, risk, and contribution. So these questions will decide the data points and what needs to be compared and analyzed in terms of before and after situations for projects. So for if you are looking at the risk parameter of IRIS, then whether this project will be able to overcome the execution risk. Like, when funders are trying to invest in a new social intervention or donate to a new social intervention, they would want to know whether the social enterprise and its management are capable enough to of overcoming all the relevant challenges and are able to complete the project. So there's an execution risk or the sustainability risk. Even if the project is once executed, will it be sustainable over longer periods of time? Or there are 10 different types of risks that are listed down. So that is a way of analyzing a project in IRIS Plus. And what is the contribution of the project? So that is IRIS Plus. Then another important guideline is in the Indian context especially, is the National Guideline for Responsible Business Conduct 2018. And they are especially relevant in the context of BRSR, that is Business Responsibility and Sustainability Reporting, which is now mandatory for many uh, corporates with high market capitalization, top 1,000, etc. So that is also, BRSR is also primarily based on these national guidelines for responsible business conduct. And in those guidelines, the focus is on the integrity and transparency of the accounting of the particular enterprise, and whether sustainability is followed, employee well-being, whether all the members of that enterprise are responsive to stakeholders, all your human rights are taken care of, and it's all environmental sustainability is given priority. Whether when if lobbying for policy making and all, whether that is done with integrity and responsibility and all of that. And basically, um, the end consumer or the end targeted beneficiary, whether you're responsibly servicing the needs of that consumer. So that is how national guidelines for responsible business conduct are structured. So when we talk about these standards, which CA Institute has come up with, these are 16 thematic areas. Now, the thematic area 1 is eradicating hunger, poverty, malnutrition, and inequality. And the Sustainable Development Goal 1 and 2, no poverty, no hunger, can be mapped to the first standard. Similarly, suppose you have SAS 400, promoting gender equality, again, where India is lacking as per their assessment, empowerment of women and LGBTQIA plus communities. So that can be directly mapped to SDG 5, which is gender equality. Now, sometimes we come across initiatives which kind of fit into multiple thematic areas. Let's say you are doing assessment for a residential school for mental health students. Students having issues with mental well-being. So in which case, your SAS 200 will also be applicable because you're promoting health, including mental health. At the same time, SAS 300 will also be applicable because you're promoting education, employability, and livelihoods. Because you're initially, largely through the initiatives of the residential school, you're trying to make those individuals independent and um, be able to earn their livelihood. So both the standards will be applicable in these areas. Project Tiger, we discussed that would come under SAS 500. For example, we discussed in the theory of change, one project to restore an old historical site. So that will come under SAS 600. So different um, projects we have to map as per the relevant thematic area, and we can refer those standards for the for conducting the social impact assessments. Also, as per mapping given here with respect to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, we can also have a separate social impact assessment report, which is benchmarked against UN SDGs. Now, each and every social impact assessment standard has this structure. It starts with the objective and scope, why this thematic area and what exactly it seeks to address, which intervention. Accordingly, with reference to the standard, as an impact assessor, the first step would be to define the objective and scope of the assessment. So this has to be in collaboration with the social enterprise. Sometimes it may be a limited review of one particular project or one particular geography or one particular time period. So all of that needs to be at the outset discussed with those who are charged with governance. And then accordingly, we define the objective and scope. Then it starts with data collection. A lot of technology, I mean, the tools are available these days. You have these questionnaires and surveys online. And in my experience, at least, they work very well, especially students, when the initiatives are in the field of education and young students you want to collect their responses. These online surveys are very useful. Although they are not allowed mobile phones, they will if you request the teachers to assign computer labs for the assessment. Just in 10 minutes, they will give all the responses online, and it is that effective. But even in other thematic areas, I think data collection is largely moving towards technology-based tools and all of that. Because even in the rural areas, you can go with tabs and the interviewers can collect the responses. And then it is easier to collate the surveys, collate the responses. Then you have a desk review, you go through all the relevant documents, all the mission, vision, and all the past performance, the registration documents and all of that of the organization, what they're seeking to achieve. You go through pictures, photographs, you do personal inspection, personal interviews, evaluate the questionnaires which the social enterprise has come up with. Then you have the key metrics for evaluation of the program. So that is based on thematic area, and each of the social impact assessment standard pertaining to that thematic area is giving a range of key impact indicators which could be applicable. So they are not inclusive but indicative, and a lot of reference and insights can be drawn from these reference standards. So once they are set, then it is about the assessment, actual assessment, benchmarking, comparison with baseline levels, comparison with past year levels, and those would be good indicators of how the intervention has progressed throughout the time frame in which it is to be assessed. Then we also share the challenges and limitations of conducting that assessment, and then the taxonomic classification. Sorry, it's jumping. Sorry. Just give me a moment. Hello. Yeah, I'm working on it. Just I said, please give me a moment. I'm working on the screen. Just give me a moment. Yeah, is the screen visible now? I'm sorry for that interruption, brief interruption. Please, someone let me know if the screen is visible. Okay. Thank you. So, I think we discussed a lot about frameworks and the structure and what all we need to refer. Now, let's ref refer to the opportunities. Amongst the various opportunities that are available for social impact assessors, couple of them are mandated by the regulators. First and foremost, all entities listed on the social stock exchange for funding need to get their impact assessments done by a registered impact assessor every year. So, and that is in a prescribed format and all. So we'll come to that a little later, but there are other things like, CSR programs of corporates. So in certain cases, again, there is a mandate to conduct an impact assessment. For other social enterprises also, they may just, although it's not mandated, they may be interested in getting an impact assessment done so that they can get more funding, or they may just want to share their story with the donors and all the relevant stakeholders, or just as a learning exercise. So there is a demand for these kind of assessments also. Um, and I have been fortunate enough to do certain engagements of this kind. It is interesting, fulfilling work. Only thing you should be interested in actually visiting those sites, because generally they will be in underprivileged areas and all of that. But it is interesting work, and it is catching up also. It is providing value. Then we can also assist in the social aspect of ESG audits, BRSR, that is business responsibility and sustainability reporting, and its assurance. So these are two different areas. What is actually mandated in the for the entities listed on the social stock exchange is to be is that these impact assessment reports have to be submitted at the end of the year in their prescribed forms. So there is form number 2.1, which has been raised, form 3.1, and Other forms are in the nature of self-disclosures, where there is no mandate to disclose the impact assessment. Social enterprises have to, kind of, in that prescribed form, give details of their general compliance and registrations and the status of their other projects, which are not listed, and any other requirements as per SEBI circular dated September 19, 2025. Now, if you will allow me, I can also show you a format of Form 2.1. So I'll stop just sharing and just share the format of Form 2.1 so that this is a form which impact assessors are supposed to use for listed enterprises and for listed projects. So there is this elaborate set of disclosures, and it's very clearly written as to what is to be filled by the social enterprise, what is to be filled by the impact assessor. So section C is the only part that is to be filled by the impact assessor, but one needs to review everything, the form, the part, section A, section B, everything. All instructions are clearly given. This is what the form looks like. Now, if you would like to actually refer to a filled out form, then some of them are actually available in the public domain. I was looking at the form filled out by FUEL, which is an acronym for Friends Union for Education and something like that. It's a well-established NGO. So they have already filled out the form, and I saw it on net, and it's and it can be used as reference. So, so all your timelines, midterm, end term, what you expect to achieve, everything is to be disclosed. And like we discussed earlier, section A and section B are to be filled out by the social enterprise themselves, but sometimes they may still need help in filling out these forms and all. So those services can also be rendered in terms of handholding, although the mandatory part is only section C. So this is again to be filled out by the social enterprise, but you can handhold the staff of the social enterprise because they are generally from the social work side. Generally they are graduates in social work or masters in social work. So uh, these things need to be kind of explained and interpreted to them. Similarly, these are annexures that are required. And this is the section C, which the social impact assessor is actually expected to fill out. So this is basically an analysis of the social implementation plan. And you need to share your independent analysis by conducting an elaborate social impact assessment. So let's go back to the main presentation. Anyways, all the details of what the prerequisites are for social enterprise to list on the social stock exchange, we will briefly look at here, that the annual expenditure of that enterprise, of that SE, should be 50 lakh rupees or more. Or it should be, in fact, it should be above rupees 50 lakhs. The funds raised in that particular year should be above rupees 10 lakhs. Any entity which wants to register on the social stock exchange should be otherwise registered for a period of 1 year or more. Then there is who all can register. Either it can be a see, for-profit social enterprises don't need to register. They don't require a listing here on the social stock exchange. So it is NPOs. And which are these NPOs? Either they are charitable trusts formed under the Indian Trusts Act 1882 or various state legislatures. So it could be a charitable trust, or it could be a society registered under the Societies Registration Act, or a Section 8 company as per Companies Act 2013. So any of these three entities can register. And again, 67% of their revenue or expenditure activities should be for the targeted beneficiaries. So if you want to have a look at the detailed requirements of listings and everything, it is available on the National Stock Exchange, Social Stock Exchange portal, where you get, this link I have shared over here. You get the detailed guidelines. But these are the broad contours of who can list and where it is mandatory to get a social impact assessment done. The other context in which social impact assessment is mandatory is for CSR obligations as per Rule 8. We all are aware that, when entities have more than 1,000 crore turnover or 500 crore net worth or more than 5 crore annual profit for the last 3 years, then 2% of their average net profits of last 3 years have to be allocated for CSR activities. And in a case where their such CSR obligation is more than 10 crores, uh, based on average last 3 years data, then it is compulsory or it is mandatory for such corporates to get a social impact assessment done. And that is for all projects which are over and above rupees 1 crore in expenditure. And such assessment should be held before 1 year expires after the project has been completed. So that is where it is mandatory. It does not mandate here that only a registered member of the, let's say, Institute of Social Auditors of India or some other SRO under CMA Institute or Sales Institute needs to do it. But definitely, these professionals are better equipped to handle such social impact assessments. So this is where the regulatory context is and the requirements are there. Mm, but how much can an impact assessor charge? Now, there are, as per Rule 8, initially it was 5% or 50 lakhs, whichever 5% of the total spend on that intervention, or 50 lakhs, whichever is lower. Now it is 2% of or 50 lakhs, whichever is higher. So that is the max amount. It is considered as administrative expenses. The amount paid to the social impact assessor is considered as a part of their administrative expenses, and there is a ceiling or a limit as to how much one can charge as per the guideline shared here. The other opportunities are basically conducting awareness sessions. Now, these could be for any of the stakeholders. It could be for impact funders, risk funders, or the social enterprises themselves, for the staff, their management, the volunteers, the trainers, um, or even, sometimes beneficiaries. So all these awareness sessions can be conducted. So this is an opportunity, like how we have this webinar going on. Such webinars or seminars can be conducted. There can be journalism pertaining to this sector. So there are so many uh, we activities in the social sector that are going on right now. Some are in the organized sector, some not in the organized sector. So chronicling their successes and failures based on their impact assessments, so that it is kind of a learning exercise for all other stakeholders in the social sector. So this journalism, either through social media, through print journalism, or whatever, this is another upcoming field. The training of social impact assessors or the staff of social enterprises for best practices, because like we shared earlier, the staff may be focused on social work but not so much in terms of documentation, maintaining data which is required for robust impact assessment, or in terms of following best practices, or they may not be experts in project implementation. So training of the SE staff or management or volunteers is also an area. Then there is, of course, corporate advisory, because even in ESG, S like that is a social performance of a company. How they are developing their human capital, how they are developing the local communities, what positive impact they have created socially around their locations, geographical locations, and also on the consumers by creating consumer awareness campaigns. So all that what you say consulting services can be offered to corporates, and uh, we can also collaborate with ESG professionals for BSR implementations, especially in social sector areas, in the C or in CSR obligations, or we can work with CSR consultants. Okay, we can also provide advisory on ESG governance structure in terms of measuring social impact of certain in-house initiatives. Um, Okay. Fieldwork agencies, a lot of times when the projects are very large and spread across geographies, different fieldwork agencies are engaged to conduct the separate portions of the entire impact assessment. So advisory sessions on how the fieldwork agencies need to conduct their work, what kind of best practices they need to follow, how the documentation is to be maintained, how data is to be analyzed, or for example, how sampling is to be conducted. So all kinds of guidelines and advisory services are required. So fieldwork agencies, advisory is another area. Um, so in general, you can be catalysts in capacity building and social development, especially when there is a need for social sector to grow rapidly and there are some ambitious goals, and a lot of organizations, including international organizations, are active. Impact assessments as a field is growing. And then we can be change vectors, that be the change that you want to see in the world, as it's famously said. And we can ourselves venture into social entrepreneurship by drawing inspiration from this kind of work, or help out in fintech. Now there are a lot of tools, survey questionnaires, or such stuff which is being designed and integrated into impact assessments, so that support also is required. Now, since we have a lot of CA members also as participants, I can share and map out areas where CAs can be automatically effective in fields of social impact assessment. Now, what is required as per the framework and standards also is that the professional approach is required, competence is required, systematic, documented, evidence-based practices are required, which CAs are typically used to. So evaluation of organizational policies, internal systems, processes, controls. So if there are any suggestions which are to be given in terms of their internal control system, then CAs are anyway used to collaborating with the managements to, kind of share loopholes in the internal control systems and all of that. Or they have a lot of experience in the use of systems, tools, reporting data, information, expertise in the audit and assurance process, attestation procedures, or um, sometimes we've already developed the skills of working with all kinds of stakeholders. So that can come in handy. Say, independent opinion is required, quality control procedures in conducting the assurance engagement, knowledge of frameworks and other interpretations in specific contexts. So understanding of overall understanding of business, industry, internal and external factors that affect organizations. So all of this um, is will kind of come in handy for CAs in this area. Now, what are the eligibility criteria for CAs? We look at the eligibility criteria for CAs as well as non-CAs. Now, as per the ICDR regulations, so all ICDR and LODR regulations of SEBI in connection with the social stock exchange explain all relevant definitions, etc. So definitely one can have a look at all of that in detail. But if a person is a CA or a CS or ICWA and also holds a certification from NISM in this particular course, then you can apply with the Institute of Social Auditors of India or some parallel SRO to become a registered social impact assessor, for which then the membership of that institute will be granted. And for that, if you are not a professional and you are a postgraduate, then you require 3 years experience in the developmental sector, or if you are a regular graduate, then you need at least 6 years experience in the development sector. And plus, of course, the certification from NISM. But if the firm wants to register, then it should have been in this area for at least 3 years prior to the registration. And that even if one of the employees or partners, trustees, or owners of the firm or the entity is a social impact assessor, then that person's experience also can be of 3 years can also be considered as the experience of the firm. So then this particular firm can apply to either ISAI or again any SRO. So these are the eligibility criteria as to who can conduct these assessments. You can take the exam for social impact assessment held by NISM and obtain the certification, apply for registration with the institute, like I said. And it's a very simple process. Along with your registration, the institute itself offers a workbook for reference, and with the help of the workbook, you can clear the exam. So it's not very uh, time consuming or difficult, and the centers are all over the country. So you can choose a center of which suits you and obtain the certification. So I think going back to the certified social impact assessors through that NISM certification and ISA are required to conduct an annual impact assessment for these listed entities. Now, if you all will permit me, just 2 minutes, I will show how many entities are listed and for funding on the NSE website, and what is the nature of the entities. So most of these NGOs that they have to be listed on the Darpan portal and of the government, and then they can, if they've completed 1 year of their existence and the registration is more than 1 year old, they can apply for registration to the social stock exchange. So let me just share this. I just wanted to draw your attention to, the number of or the NGOs that have been registered since how long, and which are the ones which are listed and all, so that kind of helps our understanding as to what's happening in the sector. So the first one was Unnati Foundation. Now they are also listed for funding, and in fact they have two listings for fundings. Then there's Mukti and different kinds of Swadesh Foundation. They are all working in different areas. And this is the one I was referring to, Friends Union for Energizing Lives. They have already filled out their 2.1 form and it is available in the public domain. So I'm just sharing as a reference uh, in- for us as impact assessors. Some are working in the field of environment, some in the field of education. We looked at all the social impact assessment standards based on the thematic areas, everything has been charted out. So how to structure the impact assessment? Now, it could be either um, in collaboration with research agencies, or if it's a really large project, or sometimes social enterprises will directly outsource it to a big name, or sometimes the social impact assessment is the expectation of certain social enterprises is that the impact assessment is built into their regular um, processes, systems and processes, and that is especially with uh, you know um, enterprises which have international funding, because then they want to know exactly how the project is progressing, the effectiveness of the project, whether the implementation is as per the budgets. So not necessarily in terms of financial budgets, and social impact assessment is not, may not be looking at the financial angle, but in terms of the percentage of resources already exhausted vis-a-vis the traction gained. That is something that will give us insights on how the project is being implemented. So technically, yes, we are not supposed to comment on the financial aspects, but it does throw light on the effectiveness of the project implementation. So, and in terms of, how much more can be achieved through what resources are still yet to be used. So that can give pointers towards um, what level of whenever there is funding, there is an intention that it is a solution for a particular need, a social change that is desired. So to what extent that intent can be furthered is very visible sometimes when we look at these records, and those insights are considered very valuable. It's just a list of different entities that have already been registered. Now, another area for social impact assessors, I would think, is to approach NGOs who are unaware of, a lot of NGOs have talked to our not even aware that there is something called a social stock exchange and that they could actually raise funds through listings, and forget raise funds, even improve their visibility, and the importance of being in the like being regulated by certain provisions, and how that can actually enhance their uh, funding probability. So all these aspects are not known. Um, Although I think the institutes conduct some outreach programs and certain NGOs do attend, a lot of these managements of social enterprises are not very aware or not very comfortable with approaching um, impact assessors to let's say register and kind of move forward on that path. So that is another important opportunity that can be created. I'm told that there is no question and answer session at the end. So I don't know what kind of questions would be arising in the minds of participants and what I'm supposed to address. But one question which I usually used to get is, can we club ESG and SIA consulting? So that overlap is very limited because ESG performance assessment is typically in the context of corporates, where they want to assess the ESG performance in addition to their although they're focused on their profitability and margins and all of that, and the financial returns are, the primary concern. The ESG performance is also to be evaluated. So that is where ESG performance assessment steps in. Whereas social impact assessment is typically for NGOs or for-profit social enterprises, where the mm, social development or social welfare is the primary intent. And their impact assessment is more in terms of what was the stated strategic intent and what is the solution they are seeking for a particular problem in a particular social problem in a specific geography, more or less. So that is where social impact assessment comes in. True for ESG also, there is a social aspect, and that is where you can implement the principles of social impact assessment to an extent, and you can work with ESG consultants as a social impact assessor, but that overlap is limited. Otherwise, the context is different. So if sometimes where we identified an area where if the corporates are having a CSR obligation of more than 10 crores average of the last 3 years, then they need to get an impact assessment done of all their projects which are above 1 crore. So in that context, you can work with a corporate because it is funded by the corporate, but that working with the ESG consultant, grouping ESG and SIA is not entirely feasible, according to me. So that is one question which usually comes up in other sessions also. So that is why I'm answering. The other aspect is in I think I missed the trail of thought. We can go back to the presentation. Apart from the 2.1 form of one of the NGOs that I suggested, there are a lot of impact assessment reports which are not required to be in a prescribed form. Like those are not for projects which are listed on the social stock exchange. So they can be in any other form also, right? So a lot of them are available for referencing. I have shared some in the appendix here. Let me go to the appendix and uh, oh, sorry, we is the screen sharing this particular site? This is about what are the fees for registration of social stock exchanges, for registration at the social stock exchange. It is INR 5,000 plus. So the registration fees are very minimal. And The costs are, as they have shared here, the costs are only indicative. Registration fees can change the future, but as you can see, it is a lot of people think that, okay, this is involves a lot of work and a lot of cost, and whether it will be that helpful. So we can share that this is only 5,000 rupees registration fee, but and they have to pay the fees of the social impact assessor. But that will give them a lot of visibility, and that can also generate a lot of trust and confidence in the minds of the donors. As we have seen, the ticket size is only 1,000 rupees for listed projects. But even if you're not listed, and you can pitch to future donors that you're a registered entity, you're a compliant, regulated entity, that is going to create a very positive impression and create a lot of confidence in the minds of the donors, also in the minds of the trustees. But you also get an impact assessment done annually. One, it will help the organizations to achieve their results faster, better, with mitigating all the risks along the way. They can also raise funding, impact funding. So impact funding is something that comes after the project is implemented. Risk funding is something that comes before the project is implemented. Risk funding is granted with the belief that the project will be implemented as envisaged, and the risk of execution or sustainability or any other allied risks are taken by the risk funder. Whereas once the project is completed, the impact funder can step in and say, yes, I'm satisfied with how this project has been implemented. I'm willing to donate to this cause. So then he or the impact funder pays off to the risk funder, kind of, reimburses to the risk funders. That is how these things operate generally. And getting into the regulatory space will give visibility, confidence, trust, and of course, once the impact assessment is done, a lot of assurance to all the stakeholders as to the fact that the project is being professionally assessed, measured. The success can be celebrated by all the stakeholders. If there are some failures, there are learnings to be implemented in the future, and there are ample opportunities for course correction. So in general, since there is so much outlay and so much expectation of social change, and there is a need for social change, the social impact assessor has a lot to contribute. I know the session was, or webinar was scheduled to end by 5 p.m., but more or less we have touched upon all the aspects that I was supposed to cover. We'll just go through the other suggestions I have in terms of useful websites. So NGO Darpan, that is one useful, that gives the whole listing of all NGOs that are operating in various sectors. A lot of them operating in the education sector, a lot of them operating in health and sanitation, but not as many probably operating in the area of malnutrition and addressing hunger. If you look at the achievement as compared to the targets of the sustainability development goals, sustainable development goals, either of Niti Aayog or United Nations. So then, of course, the isai.ca.in, the Institute of Social Auditors of India. Now, everywhere, initially, the word social auditors was being used. The standards were called the social audit standards. So all of those members of the institute who have registered earlier would have referenced them as social audit standards. But in December 2023 itself, SEBI came up with this explanation that henceforth, all social audit engagements would be referred to as social impact assessment engagements, and wherever the word social audit is appearing in their circulars or in the standards or wherever, it has to be interpreted as social impact assessment. It has to be kind of replaced for all practical purposes by social impact assessments. So that is where the difference comes in. Um, then there is ISR network, which has a lot of resources and a lot of collaborative opportunities with other professionals in this area. And Social Audit Network, India.org. Again, there are some uh, impact reports which can be looked at to get an idea or some practical insights as to how we can frame our impact reports, where it is in forms, prescribed forms 2.1, 3.1, that is another matter. But sometimes you also need to share stories. So when you're writing the report as an impact assessor, we can have reference to all these different links which are appearing on the screen. I have also shared a link for the VFS Global Sustainability Report because it also has some social aspects to it, and we can draw inspiration or take reference of those stories. Because once it is interesting, or suppose sometimes, nowadays these big social enterprises or international social enterprises, they have interesting web pages and they have stories on the web page. So sometimes these reports also can be uploaded on those websites, and pictures tell 1,000 words. So you can use pictures from your site visits, some videos, some interesting um, experiences that you've had, testimonials. So all of that needs to be shared in that impact assessment report. Now, apart from what we can see here, generally, any impact assessment report needs to have an executive summary. That context of the project needs to be given. Then the scope of the impact assessment also needs to be outlined very clearly, the geographical scope or the extent of review that one is supposed to conduct as a part of the engagement. um, it could be also for a specific time frame. So all of that, whatever is the scope, or only a certain project may be covered. A particular social enterprise may have multiple projects or multiple ongoing projects, but we may be covering only one or two specific projects. So that scope has to be clearly outlined. Then the assumptions in conducting the assessment, the methodologies which have been used, the limitations and the challenges in conducting that assessment, all of that needs to be clearly brought out. And then, of course, the uh, key impact indicators which were agreed upon as to what would be measured, what would be compared with the baseline, what would be compared with the before and after situations, compared as the before and after situations of project implementation. And then key findings. Now, the findings would be more or less in the nature of a gap analysis as to what was expected to be achieved and what has been achieved, or complementary in terms of what successes have been achieved so that they can be celebrated and replicated in other areas. Also, in terms of what the overall strategic intent of the project is. So some future looking statements are okay, not in specifically that it plans to achieve X percentage or X number or whatever, but overall direction going ahead. Generally, target versus actual numbers are not shared in the overall impact report. Only what is achieved is generally stated in numbers. But that is how, and then it kind of ends with the opportunities for improvement and how, if course correction, if any, is required. Main thing is if there are any qualifications in these impact assessment reports, then maintaining evidence is extremely crucial. Evidence, like we maintain in internal audits or even statutory audits, if there is a qualification, then in general, maintaining evidence is essential, but especially if we are qualifying these reports, evidence is very critical. Now, in one question that is regularly asked is, in certain cases, outcomes are quantifiable, but there are areas in which soft outcomes are expected, and it's very difficult to quantify them. So how much ever you try to build in objectivity into your report, and you quantify all those aspects which can be quantified, there will still be this subjective element, which remains. Like, for example, um, one project is developing the cottage industry of a rural area where women of that tribal women are employed in that cottage industry with the view to empowering women's lives. Now, there could be different intentions here. It could be complementing the incomes of the households, or it could be, um, you know, improving the plight of women in general, in terms of their earnings, their health, their upkeep, and in and consequently the standard, or upgrading the standard of living of the rural areas. But here in that particular project, the idea may be to empower women. Now, to measure or have that impact indicator, are the women empowered after implementing of the project, it is very hard to quantify and make a statement in the impact report. But we can have normal social pointers, like, you see, if the lady has power over her uh, uh, earned income, then we can say she's empowered. But if it is going into the family kitty, and it really doesn't upgrade her standard of living, then it has probably not empowered. So these are the social trends that one needs to capture and share as impact outcomes. These are some examples where, there is some ambiguity or some qualitative or subjective aspects which one usually comes across. But by and large, we make the process as organized, systematic, documented, evidenced, and as verifiable as possible. And we have to also check what outcomes are being valued by the donors or the funders, or the intended users of the report. So some testimonials, some case studies, that also one can share in the impact assessment report. And comparable case studies could be of enterprises operating within the same sector, in the same geography, but not from other sectors. So like to like comparisons are encouraged here. I think once the comparisons and the case studies and the sector analysis and even the subjective insights are shared, it can end with the overall conclusion of the impact assessor, and that is to the discretion of the impact assessor how the reports will be closed. These are obviously the reports which are otherwise asked for, and not in the prescribed forms, of course. So in both cases, whether the impact assessment is mandated by a regulation, or where it is just required by the social enterprise for any of the other purposes, the underlying exercise will still have to be the same, more or less. I think I have touched upon most of the aspects of conducting social impact assessments and where the opportunities are for professionals. With that, I would like to close the session, if I have the permission, or if there is anything else to be covered, please let me know. Thank you for being with me in this session so far.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for taking us through this session. And I'm sure the participants have gained valuable perspectives that will help them in appreciate the concept and its practical significance more deeply. So, on behalf of Institute of Social Auditors of India, we would sincerely thank you for all your time and effort. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, ma'am. Thank you to all the participants for joining this webinar. Thank you so much. Yes.